The moon does not produce light. The sun produces light, but the moon reflects light. That is what it means, Khalifa. Yeah? The Khalifa mencerminkan, reflects the image, the nature, the reign, and the purpose of God. That's what the Khalifa should do. Next slide, please. But it's not true. We're not like that. Sorry, this slide is sedikit potong. I chose this photo of a squirrel, of a tupai, because he has his nut, and he's like, this is mine, yeah? Ini kacang saya. And that is what we are like, yeah? So actually, that is why relationships between husbands and wives get broken. Because it's me first, yeah? Aku duluan. And it's the same with alam, yeah? Me first. So jadi dengan perikanan, ada stok ikan di laut, ada dua negara, satu yang pikir, oke, kami ambil ikan sebelum itu berenang ke sana. Kami ambil duluan. And that's the reality. So I work with illegal fishing across countries. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's creation, devastation. Now let's talk about restoration. Okay. Actually, creation, we all agree. Devastation, we all agree. Restoration, maybe you will not agree with my position. That's okay, but let me share it. There are three problems when we think about restoration, three dangers. The first is people say, we can fix it. Manusia mampu. Kami manusia hebat. Kami dengan teknologi, dengan segala macam, kami bisa menyelesaikan masalah dunia sendiri tanpa Tuhan. That's a problem. Secondly, despair. Waduh, dunia ini hancur, tidak ada solusi. There's no hope. Thirdly, and I often find this with people of faith, baik Kristen maupun Muslim, tidak apa-apa kalau tidak diperbaiki, nanti ada surga. Yeah? That is also a big, big problem. So, how do we understand this correctly? Next slide, please, Pat. Okay, we need to have a kingdom mindset. Yeah? So God appointed Nabi Adam as the Khalifa, as his representative. But Nabi Adam did not obey. He did not do the right thing. So, after Nabi Adam, God sent many other representatives, some of whom were kings. Nabi Adam, Raja Daud, Raja Sulaiman, these various kings. Again, none of them were perfect in their role as Khalifa. So God promised, a king is coming, a powerful king like this lion, a good king, a king in my image. Next slide, please. And so, Isa al-Masih came. And it's really interesting because what he said is, the kingdom of God has come near. Kerajaan Allah sudah dekat. So, many Christians misunderstand. Isa did not bring a religion. Isa did not bring a philosophy. He brought a kingdom. He was the Khalifa that God had promised. And what happens in the kingdom when the king is around? Well, I wrote some things down here. Orang buta bisa lihat, orang lumpuh bisa jalan, Orang mati dibangkitkan kembali. Orang yang dulu membenci, saling membenci, mereka saling mengasihi. Bahkan alam waktu kacau dengan badai diredakan. So when the king is present, life is good. And it's the kind of place we want to be. And so that is a taste. Like mencicipi rasa bagaimana nanti dengan kerajaan Allah. And so for me, as a scientist and as a person of faith, restoration, it cannot be separated from the king. You cannot have true restoration with God, with humanity, and with alam without that king. Next slide, please. So, well, we don't need to go through the summary. Well, maybe I will. Creation, jadi penciptaan. Allah membuat itu sangat baik. Devastation, manusia merusak. Ketiga, restorasi. God will restore it. We have tasted it and we can be part of it. What's the last slide? Sorry, this is jadi sedikit potong dari kiri. The challenge. Yeah, when we are talking about alam, it is not only about knowing things, it is about doing things. So I want to challenge you. Saya mau menantang dengan 4 hal ini. The first one, we must be present with God in nature. So actually, every month, I take one day and I go into nature to be with God. Untuk membaca kitab-kitab, untuk berdoa, untuk, yeah. And that is really important to keep me rooted. That's my pattern. Because if I'm on my smartphone all the time, it's not good. 2, care for creation is an act of worship. Ini ibadah sebenarnya. Untuk memelihara alam, untuk menjaga alam, sebenarnya itu salah satu role kita sebagai ibadah. Ketiga, we must act. And this is the most difficult for us in Indonesia. Kita harus jadi aktivis. Why is this difficult? Because in culture in Indonesia, harmony, saling hormat, that is the most important thing. Yeah, we don't want to upset the relationship. But actually, when we see what is happening to nature, it's wrong. We must do something. We can talk about that in the question time if you want. And then lastly, and this is my final point, masalahnya di skala dunia, yeah, global. Yeah, these problems, climate change, plastic pollution, overfishing, loss of biodiversity, we cannot solve them from one perspective, from one agama, from one suku. We must work together. It really is the only way that we can solve some of these problems. So, that's everything from me. Thank you very much indeed.
Give applause. Okay. I think it is a wonderful presentation from Dr. Richard Stanford, okay, because he also are good in making role play and also simulations. Okay, so we have little just something like 2 minutes to discuss, but I don't know what is the exact answer for the audience here. Okay, so we would like to elaborate later. Okay, and then for the next speaker, I would like to call. I would like to give the time to Dr. Robert Popes. Time is yours.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sangat luar biasa tadi mengenai alam, dan saya lihat Pak Rich hampir seperti Nabi Muhammad keluar 1 bulan per tahun di dunia alam, ya. Ya. Untuk saya ada beberapa keadaan, sorry, I'll mix it in English and Indonesian as well, but times where I stepped into another world. Masuk ke dunia lain. Yeah. For me, it was Muhammadiyah S3. Muhammadiyah Malang, yeah. And so I go along to class and I enter into another world. Yeah. And that was so valuable. Itu saya sangat hargai pengalaman itu. Sampai bisa masuk ke dunia yang berbeda di kampus Muhammadiyah. And it was a little bit like last night, I noticed, with the 2 rooms. Ini sampai malam seperti masih jalan terus lewat jam 9 di ruang sini ya. Yeah, di sebelah. And in our class, it was a little bit like that. The other classes in Muhammadiyah, they all go home. Our class, we just keep talking, because we were different. We were just different. Ini baru bertemu dunia lain. And you see something from this perspective, they see from this perspective, and it's very benefiting. Sangat menghargai pengalaman begitu. And then I can go back to Australia, and I have an understanding. In English we have a phrase, I was like a fly on the wall. Saya seperti ini diterjemahkan lalat ya. Dengar diskusi di dalam Muhammadiyah kelas. Wah, begitu ya. You have a new perspective on the world. And another time, I won't go into this but too much, but where I stepped into another world, it's in but Chris talks about South Thailand. When I go into South Thailand, there is a specific place going from Hat Yai in South Thailand, going down south, and HP tidak berfungsi lagi. Kalau masuk ke South Thailand, roaming tidak bisa, apa saja tidak bisa kalau dari Indonesia. Blokir, blokir. And you suddenly realize, without my HP, I'm going into another world, like no maps, no nothing, no communication. And today, I want to just share a bit about, and I want you to imagine going into another world. Di dunia Arabia. And what it was, because we assume things, but a lot of research, banyak penelitian, sampai dunia ini sangat berbeda dengan asumsi kami sekarang ya. So, we can go on the next slide. Sorry, we got some slides here. As I like to explain, in imagining this world, there are like 2 libraries. One library with the Arabic library later on, and there's another library because the time of Muhammad, it didn't have the Arabic library. That came later, yeah. Ada bahasa semua ditulis di dalam bahasa yang berbeda, bahasa Suryani pada umumnya, ya, in Syriac, yeah. And so now they say, if you can speak this Syriac language, translate something from those who are occupied by Arabs, and you get a PhD. Langsung terjemahkan ini dari bahasa Syriac, bahasa Inggris, langsung S3 keluar. Kurang lebih begitu. Because that was the people who were looking, the people who were conquered, they were saying, oh, begini. Langsung, contemporary observation, yeah? Yeah, and so this is the 2 libraries. And one thing I wanted to mention about my experience in Muhammadiyah, after a bit of time, we forgot what religion we were, in a sense. We forgot someone asked me, what religion are you yesterday? Tapi kalau paling akrab, ini sudah lupa, ini bicara terus. We would keep talking when we forget what religion we're representing. You're just pursuing truth. And I think that's the goal with academic, ideally, dunia akademis harus melupakan, lupa semua agama apa yang saya wakili, kami kejar kebenaran. Like that, yeah? Yeah, we just pursue truth, wherever it takes us. And that was, in a sense, I realized I need to become like a child. Because my children, I lived in Sulawesi. My children, anak saya lahir di Kediri, ya. And they just play, and they play dress-ups. My children put on the jilbab, like, tidak ada yang, there's nothing politically correct. And it's all just fun. They don't care what religious identity. Jadi hari ini lebih sekedar identitas agama. Kami kejar apa yang benar. Itu dunia akademik begitu, ya. Yeah. And so also, that's for one read. That's like from my experience, but also the reality from what I observed from this other library. This is fairly common consensus. Identitas agama tidak ada pada awal dia seperti kami ada sekarang. Like there was no Islam like we know Islam now. And in the time of after Jesus, there was no Christian like they're evolved. They just evolve, yeah? So I hope we can get out of the box, religious identity box, and just learn, yeah? Yeah. So with that, time traveling back into this world, di dunia Arabia, dengan pengertian seperti tadi. And I said from beberapa peneliti, hal baru, wah masuk ke dunia ini, berbeda dengan, the next slide, sorry, I'm looking at my computer, I forget. One thing that with recent research, and I mentioned this somewhere else before, this researcher, or this person, Ahmad Jalad, yeah? And this is a common understanding increasingly, dunia Arabia pada zaman itu sudah tauhid sebelum zaman Nabi, ya. Ini beda dengan tradisi with that it was polytheistic, yeah? Many gods and so on. But it was compromised monotheism. Jadi mereka sudah tahu kisah Nabi semua yang dari Al-Quran. Tidak perlu, oh ada orang namanya Nabi Daud dulu. Oh siapa itu? Tidak, mereka semua sudah tahu sebelumnya, ya. Yeah. So they all understood the stories. And according to this research, and this is based on the inscriptions and writings, they call it graffiti, but graffiti with a positive, like they're proud of their, in the West, we graffiti, yeah, back then, graffiti was something, I want to write something true, and this is the graffiti. Because there are no books. Jadi tidak ada buku, ini ditulis di batu atau apa. According to this research, thousands, maybe 10,000 writings, no talking about gods. Jadi itu selalu bersifat tauhid 200 tahun sebelum Nabi Muhammad datang. Sudah ada. Yeah. And many Christian, many Jews, di Arabia. Just one problem. No kitab. You could imagine if we removed all the kitab HP, all the Al-Quran from Indonesia, and then we lived our life with no kitab. What would we be like? This is what I imagine. What would it be like kalau tidak ada Al-Quran di seluruh Indonesia, tidak ada Injil di seluruh Indonesia, berabad-abad begitu? Seperti apa suasananya? Yeah. So that's going back into this world. Next slide. Now, this is a picture of one of the holy books, the Bible, yeah? And you can notice here, you see the amount of work this would have taken, yeah? banyak kerja. Ini tulisan dengan tangan 1000 tahun sebelum mesin cetak. Yeah. So this is found. We can go on the next slide. Ini ditemui di lokasi ini. Sekarang di Mesir ya, Saint Catherine's Monastery. Yeah. And this is the oldest Bible in the world today. Complete Bible ya. Yeah. And nah, yang menarik mengapa ini bahasa Yunani. Jadi ini bukan bahasa yang di keliling Arabia saat itu. Tapi what is interesting, in this monastery, out in the desert, they've got a paper sebelah kanan itu. Dan menurut tradisi ini ditulis oleh Nabi Muhammad sebagai as a treaty, satu kesepakatan antara orang Arab dan ini sidik jari Nabi Muhammad. Dan secara akademis ini diakui cukup luas. Ya. Tidak 100% yakin, tapi kemungkinan sangat besar the Prophet Muhammad had exposure to the books at that time, ya. Ya. Dan ini satu istilah treaty ya. Ya, perjanjian antara orang Arab dengan bahasa Indonesia rahib ya, the monks. And it's interesting because in the Quran it talks very well about the monks ya. Kalau salah Al-Maidah ayat 82 rahib ya. Rahiban tidak sombong. Jadi so the internal evidence is they're not arrogant. And he must have got that basis from somewhere. Berdasarkan apa pandangan itu? Kemungkinan begini. Kunjungan ada yang memang mereka tidak sombong di dalamnya. So this is the world. Now, next slide. Jadi semua sudah tahu mengenai Nabi Daud, Nabi ini, tapi tidak ada kitab. Let's just open this. Tadi lihat gambar kitab ya, kitab suci, kitab Allah. Alkitab, seluruh Torah, Zabur, Injil. 1 tahun hasil kerja, malah 2 tahun. Pekerjaan 2 tahun, 2 years work, writing with hand. And with the Quran, or the Injil, the New Testament, maybe 1 year's work. We just guess roughly they say. 1 year's work, tulis dengan tangan. 1 tahun. For the bahan saja, for the materials needed, 500 cows, 500 sapi untuk satu kitab perlu. Kulit. Ya. Tapi itu dari 500 sapi kurang lebih. Now this is not exact, but it just gives an idea. 500 cows. Apakah siapa siap mengorbankan 500 sapi supaya memiliki kitab ya? And because of that, and they say it's probably the value of a house, nilai harga satu rumah, satu kitab, 1000 tahun sebelum mesin cetak, yeah. And even after 1,000 years later, I did from multiple sources. After the printing press, Gutenberg, the printing press, 800 years later, 6 months' wages to buy a Bible, even after, yeah. Sangat mahal. Nah, dampaknya. Jadi, next slide. Jadi bahan mahal, sulit mencari orang. Ini berlaku untuk Al-Quran, bukan hanya untuk Injil ya. Ini bisa membayangkan masuk ke dunia ini seperti apa. Sangat lama. Itu berarti kitab ini diakses hanya oleh orang elit. Elit tidak dalam konotasi pengertian negatif, tapi orang terbatas yang bisa, ya. So only the elite were the, meaning limited people had access to the kitab, yeah. And usually it was religious institutions like the monastery or big churches, or because of the cost, yeah. Jadi mungkin mereka ada yang datang, oh bisa saya buka? Oh jangan, ini mahal. Saya kurang tahu ya. Kalau 500 sapi jangan dirobek ya. Yeah. So, and beyond that, translation issues. Nah, kami akan lihat slide berikut. Kalau saya menciptakan suasana semua seperti ini, saya baca Al-Quran sekarang sangat berbeda konteksnya. Nah, translation crisis, and last night we heard from Daniel, I got this, yeah, to do with translation. I'll explain. The Son of God, anak Allah. Apa istilah itu dan apa masalahnya, tantangannya? Nah, saya jelaskan istilah ini karena this became created chaos in the whole of the region, division over this word. Kalau lihat di sini, bahasa Ibrani, Ben Elohim, anak Allah. Yeah. It was used by God as a metaphor for King Solomon, seperti dijelaskan tadi, yang mewakili Allah. Yeah. The son of God. Tapi istilah yang dipakai Ibrani, bahasa Ibrani di zaman dulu, Ben Elohim, anak Allah. If I ask you, if you're a father, if you're a parent, and you have a son, if you have a son, kalau ada anak, orang tua di sini yang ada anak, ada sesuatu yang sangat akrab antara orang tua dengan anak laki-laki, ya, betul? Dan kalau mau mencari satu metafor yang lebih baik daripada hubungan itu mengenai hubungan Allah dengan manusia, mungkin tidak ada. Awalnya, sebelum ada pengertian yang berbeda, itu sangat indah istilahnya. Jadi konsepnya, metafornya, this is my child. Ya, lebih baik daripada pakai gelas atau apa, anak Allah. Nah, itu in the Greek language. Jadi orang Ibrani langsung mengerti metafornya. Wah, indah ini. Bahasa Yunani, Huios taute lain, ada konotasi lain, ya, dengan dunia Yunani. Jadi harus ada penjelasan bahwa ini bukan seperti filsafat Yunani biasa dengan Apollo, ya. Tapi ada resikonya, ada salah pengertian mengenai metafor awal dan saat berkembang di dunia Yunani. Oleh karena, dengan bahasa Arab datang anak Allah, sama dengan Yunani, Arab sulit untuk menggunakan itu sebagai metafor. Betul? Jadi itu berpikir secara fisik. Jadi oleh karena itu, ini mungkin hampir selesai waktunya. 5 minutes. Ya. Jadi slide berikut. Ini membuat Arabia, Timur Tengah menjadi agak kacau atas istilah ini. Karena dari Ibrani, penerjemahan ke Yunani ada pengertian bisa antara golongan tertentu berbeda. Fisik, dewa, menikah, dan ada hubungan langsung dengan manusia ya. Dengan Arab sama dengan Yunani, mudah salah paham. Nah, saya mengerti, kalau saya masuk ke konteks itu, lalu if I read the Quran verses, wah, sangat masuk akal. Don't say God is three, don't, God does not beget, He tidak memperanak dan tidak diperanakkan ya. Wah, sangat masuk akal kalau begitu ya. Yeah, if you understand the context and translation challenges. Masalah penerjemahan dari satu konsep awal bahasa Ibrani sulit menangkap konsep itu dalam bahasa yang berbeda. And that's why dijelaskan tadi malam oleh tim penerjemah di sini, ini kembali ke makna dari awal. Jadi pakai kalifat daripada anak Allah supaya kembali ke makna awal dengan Al-Injil. Yeah. Jadi next slide. Ini tantangan semua bersifat lisan di Arabia tidak ada karena sangat mahal. Semua di orality ensured memorization but has variation. Kalau semua bersifat lisan, pasti mulai variasi ya. Kisahnya, kisah Nabi dan karena because this was limited access, it's like an anchor. Kitab seperti ya berakar di dalam kitab, tapi tidak ada, tidak ada akar, tidak bisa terikat dengan teksnya. Yeah. Yeah. So this resulted. Next slide. Diversity in belief with no fixed written sacred text. Jadi sangat beragam komunitas di Arabia, walaupun mereka menyebut nama orang Kristen, keyakinan mereka sangat beragam dan berbeda. Jadi kalau slide terakhir, lanjut satu slide lagi. Satu lagi. Saya membaca, nah ini bukan terutama bidang saya, tapi kalau baca ayat ini seperti ini, dalam konteks suasana seperti tadi, semua lisan. Some of them distort, dan saya tahu itu istilah tahrif ya. Tahrif, the book, they distort the books with their tongues. Berarti dengan lidah ya. Berarti kalau dengan lidah itu, lidah tidak dipakai untuk tulis ya. Lidah dipakai untuk bicara. Jadi perubahan, karena ini konteks lisan semua, merubah kisahnya ya, dengan lidah, distort with their tongues. And not only that, the end of this verse, they knowingly, saya rasa kasihan untuk orang zaman itu. Tidak ada kitab suci semua. Lalu kalau salah bicara, salah kutip, wajar saja ya. Tapi ini di belakangnya, they knowingly, sengaja dirubah. Ya. Jadi itu beda. Nah, yang berikut, yang ayat lain di dalam Al-Quran, He is God, the one God, He does not, dia tidak memperanak dan tidak diperanakkan. Yang ayat itu ya. Betul? Ya. Yeah. Jadi kalau ini sangat menarik ayat ini menurut saya. Karena saya lihat ayat-ayat Al-Quran ini berbicara kepada orang Kristen, bukan kepada orang Muslim. Zaman itu semua orang Kristen. Tidak ada orang Muslim seperti sekarang. Jadi ayat Al-Quran lebih baik tidak pakai istilah beget, memperanak. Itu rekomendasi dari Al-Quran kepada umat Kristen. Betul? Jadi yang ini sangat menarik. ayat yang terkenal untuk umat Kristen with beget. For God so loved the world that he begot his only son. John 3:16 ya. Istilah begot, jadi di sini jangan pakai begot seperti memperanak. Kalau Alkitab kami sekarang yang terkenal on NIV dan Alkitab yang paling banyak dipakai di seluruh dunia umat Kristen, mereka sebenarnya ikut ayat ini dalam Al-Quran, mereka rubah beget karena mereka sadar aslinya bukan memperanak. Tapi monogenes, itu aslinya, monogenes. Mono, satu ini bicara Isa ya. Mono, satu, genes, of a kind. The unique. Jadi kalau baca Alkitab sekarang, tidak lagi pakai memperanak. Tapi baru dirubah karena aslinya bukan begitu. Monogenes, one of a kind, unique. The uniqueness of Jesus. So, ini sangat menarik. Apakah ini nasihat seperti ini, ada satu pengertian terhadap istilah ini, saya tidak tahu. Jadi untuk ini saya melihat kalau saya masuk ke dalam dunia zaman itu, dan seperti saya masuk ke dalam dunia Muhammadiyah dulu, saya rasa ini bukan polemik, berdebat satu agama dengan agama lain, tapi berinteraksi dengan orang yang tidak mempunyai kitab, yang dalam keadaan kacau karena masalah penerjemahan anak Allah, dan lebih baik tidak begini, itu sangat masuk akal menurut saya. Sampai itu dihafal, ayatnya tersebar dan it spread through Arabia, this memorization of these ayat, and there we have the Quran, real live situations, keadaan yang nyata. Jadi ayat-ayat Al-Quran bukan seperti sesuatu yang tidak berhubungan dengan keadaan yang real ya. Tapi ini berbicara kepada orang Kristen pada zaman itu, tidak ada kitab, supaya kembali ke makna kitab. Sering ayat-ayat seperti ini. Terima kasih, harap bisa ikut. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I think this wonderful presentation of by Robert Pope, and I believe will be many question for you, especially for the last slide, Mr. Robert Pope. And to Mr. Iyad, and also our dean also, because our dean specialist. And the next speaker, I would like to call Bapak Ferry Mamahid, and Bapak Ferry Mamahid will talk about the activism and academism, how to combine between academicism and activism, and I think it's very interesting also. Time is yours, Mr. Ferry.
Thank you for the time that's been given to me. Good morning, everyone. Today I will present, it's not my research actually, this is a reflection on what the organization or the institution that I started, it's 2 years ago, and how I dealt with the Muslim and Christian relations. So the center is in Semarang, Jawa Tengah, Central Java, and the purpose of this center is to tackle the challenge of interfaith relations by acting by acting as what I call religious entrepreneur. So, this is what I want to share, what we have been doing so far after 2 years with this study center. So next slide, please. So as we know that Indonesia now is presenting a profound paradox. It has all the ingredients for successful interfaith collaboration so far, yet this potential is constantly undermined by real-world tension and conflicts. So you see the paradox there between the potential and the reality. So we are the world's largest Muslim country, majority country with a significant Christian minority. We have national ideology like Pancasila, and then the belief in the one God, and also borrowing the Hefner term, we have a strong historical traditions of civil Islam, which supports tolerance. But in reality, we have a history of intercommunal violence, conflicts, like in Sampit, Borneo, Ambon, Poso, and others. So we have also tensions like a discriminatory regulation, politicization of religion, place of worship being closed, and a paradox. This nation actually was built for diversity, but continually threatened by prejudice. Next slide, please. So the problem here is that we have what I call the academic void. It's like a hollow, the emptiness, or the gap, we can say. While Muslim-Christian relations is a mature field in Western academia, especially in the Western part of the world, it is limited and fragmented in Indonesia. If you read the book by Ismaturopi, he mentioned about the fragile relations between Christians or Muslims and Christians. So the consequence is that it creates actually a knowledge vacuum. There is no study about Muslim and Christian relationship so far. So the vacuum is filled with polemical, and nowadays we're talking about the digital what do you call it, the media or social media chaos, like Prof. Kadir mentioned yesterday. Historical half-truths, discussions in the YouTube and other social media is not really based on the academic study. It's more on the emotional, polemical, or apologetical tension or notions. And also the stereotypes. If you meet someone with a necktie, holding Bible, for example, it's something threatening for you. It's the same like Christians when you see people with a long beard, like with we call it gamis here. Some of Christians will be threatened with that appearance. So there are a lot of stereotypes about religions and other religions. And often this one amplified by social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and many others social medias. And the problem is that without robust academic discourse, peace-building efforts lack depth and nuance. So this is actually creating what I call the fragile social fabric. So the argument, next slide please. My thesis is that the Center for Interdisciplinary Studies on Religion and Culture addresses this problem by functioning as a religious entrepreneurs in order to enhance or to foster social cohesion, meaning that it sees the academic void not just a problem, but as an opportunity to innovate how we build Muslim-Christian relationship in an innovative way. So the concept that I want to propose this morning is that while we try to understand and support the argument, so we in SRC use the theory. This is theory actually from the socio-organizational development that we call the resource mobilization theory, or RMT. So what this theory is, or what is a religious entrepreneur? Okay. So the concept of religious entrepreneurs draw from social entrepreneurship theory, actually. Unlike a commercial entrepreneur, as we know so far, a religious entrepreneur identifies a social or religious problem. So there is an analysis of the problem at first. In this case, as I mentioned before, the interfaith discord, and innovates new solution by mobilizing resources. And it innovates new organizational forms that practice to create a social value. So the analytical framework, as I mentioned earlier, that we use resource mobilization theory, it came from the socio-organizational development, to analyze how the center that we started mobilizes key resources to build social cohesion. So the theory goes like this. The next slide, please. So the context that we have been talking is the Indonesian paradox and then the academic void, the study in the study of Muslim and Christian relations. And we have the actor. The actor is the religious entrepreneur. In this case is the CISRC. And then the core action that we have been doing is doing the strategic resources mobilization. So what is the strategic resources mobilization? So the first one, CISRC mobilizes cultural resources. It doesn't just produce academic papers, but it actively actually translates how the knowledge, translate the knowledge into the public action or the public issues, ensuring that its research challenges the stereotypes that we have been talking earlier directly in the public sphere. The second one, what we are doing is to mobilize human resources. We concentrate on the expertise, leadership, and also labor. The third action that we have been doing is that to mobilize moral resources. We built legitimacy, trust, and also solidarity. And the last one that we have been doing is that we mobilize social organizational resources, like we build networks, infrastructures, and also generating fund or funding. So the process here is that it should be there should be a dynamic integration, the synergy between all resources that I mentioned before, and the outcome that we are expecting, that there will be a social cohesion, the interfaith harmony and peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Christians. Okay, we'll be going deep to the mobilizing issues, so that we will have descriptions or imaginations about what to mobilize all these resources. So the first one is that, next, please. Yeah, we mobilize the cultural resources. This is not exactly on the, what do you call it, the cultural elements like arts or what do you call it, the cultural products. But what we mean by cultural resources, it's more on the intellectual potential, producing authoritative knowledge. So what we are doing for this is that we do the rigorous research, launching a peer review. Prof. Kadir, also one of the editors and reviewers in this journal. And we try to build the academic credibility and also to build or to gain a cultural capital. And the second one, translating and democratizing knowledge. We repackage complex research into a public webinars and also practical studies. It's been doing every week, monthly, and also, what do you call it, in one semester, like a conference like this. Last semester, we have an international conference with Universitas Wahid Hashim in Semarang, but this semester with UIN Sunan AMPEL. So what we are doing also, actually, according to Levin, this is the knowledge mobilization, to mobilize knowledge, making scholarship available and usable for community leaders and also for the public. Yeah. We just started our website, and we try to put all this, the knowledge inside the website so that everybody can access. I mean, the public leaders can access all the materials that we have. Maybe including some of the thoughts from this conference will be translating to the public. So the point is that we want to build a bridge, to bridge the gap between the theory and the practice. Next slide, please. So the second one, we mobilize human resources. So what we've been thinking is that we are trying to think about a strategic curation of expertise. That's why I want to work together with you, because I consider everybody in this room is an expert. So you can contribute anything that you can to build or to mobilize human resources in the center. So there should be an intentional disciplinary team. We need the philosophers, Islamic Christian studies scholars. We need anthropologists like Dr. Joel and other, the fisherman like Richard, and we need other experts on the fields, right? And in mobilizing human resources, also we prevent a groupthink, the thinkers, and provide nuance with a multi-angle analysis. That's why we name our center interdisciplinary studies. So any kind of discipline can contribute to the center, to the study, Next slide, please. So the other one is that we mobilize moral resources, engineering through moral technology. So we have our prime program in the center that we call it Ngaji Kitab Suci. A structured practice where Muslims, Christians read each other's sacred texts. They discuss, they put them in a very dynamic dialogue. We will not avoid debates or polemical things in that discussions, but the most interesting thing is that we practice the truth that we have been discussing into our daily life. So it's not just a discourse, wacana, but this is actually the action. Ini ada sebuah tindakan. For example, if we talk about the ecology, for example, how the Quran or Quranic texts talk about preserving the nature, and also we see in the Christians, in the Bible, we have the same concerns, and then how this community work together to bersihkan sampah, for example, to clean the trash, or to plant trees, for example. So this is just an example of what we try to do with this, the mobilizing moral resources. So it's not a debate, but what we call it, according to Ford, faith friendship and wisdom of hospitality. So we welcome Muslim Christians to come to our centers, and we treat them as friends. We treat them as a fellow, what do you call it, pilgrims, seeking truth and doing, not seeking truth, not thinking about truth, but doing truth together. So we systematically actually generates vulnerability, respect, and also trust between the members of the community. The last mobilization that we have been doing is that mobilizing a socio-organizational resource. I think this is a very important also. You may be familiar with the word global. Yeah, global, local. Yeah. So what we have been doing, the first one is we embedded locally, embedding locally. Yeah. We have a formal MOU with major Islamic University, for example, UIN Wali Songo, Semarang, Wahid Hasim University, and also lastly, just last April, if I'm not mistaken, with Prof. Kadir and other FUV faculty at UIN SUNAN AMPEL. And also with other, of course, with other Christian institutions. This provides local legitimacy and access to mainstream Muslim and Christians community, like Pondok Pesantren or any religious community. So the main purpose is that we will create bridging social capital between previously separate spheres. So the model's effectiveness relies on people and trust. CISRC brings together diverse experts and uses innovative practices like, example, Ngaji Kitab Suci. It's actually based on the scriptural reasoning that has been doing for decades, both in Oxford and also in Cambridge. And it deliberately built trust, which is essential, what do you call it, lubricant, oli, ya, untuk mesin ini, ya, to this engine. So building networks and infrastructure is also very important. Next slide. We are not embedding locally, but also we linking globally. Yeah. Partnerships with world-class institutions, for example, the CMCS, the Lamin Sanneh Institute in Ghana, and also with the Leimena Institute, because Leimena Institute actually, it's in Indonesia, but they work very hard, very closely with Templeton Religion Trust. This is a very big funding organization in the world. So they could finance or fund all the interreligious projects with thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. So what we are going to do with this linking globally, that we would provide intellectual capital that has been scattered around Indonesia or even in the region, Southeast Asia, but we want to put them together with global best practice and so forth. So this is an international validation act as a strategic buffer against a local criticism. Yeah. Okay, what we are doing with all these resources that we have mentioned earlier is that, next slide please. Oh, the one. Lagi. Yeah, to the synergistic engine of peace building. So there is a cycle actually we are, I'm going to propose with this the center that we call it a virtuous cycles. So we start from the cultural resources with a good research, good study, good discussion, academic discussion, and to build moral resources, to build a credibility of our study, of our products, for example. And then we go to another point is that from these moral resources, we unlock social organizational resources. We build partnership with national organization, also international organizations. And lastly, the cycle goes to partnership provide more human resources, and then after that it enhances cultural output, and it goes in a cycle like that. So actually resources is not for stockpiled. we gather resources, all the resources, and then we keep that resources so that we'll be rich. No, we actually, while we gather the resources, we want to give back to the community, to the public life about all these resources. So they are invested to generate more resources, and this creates an entrepreneurial engine to sustain peace building. So the idea is that the true power in this model isn't in the individual resources, each resource, but in how they work together in a cycle. Its resources actually fuels the others, creating a virtuous cycle that makes the entire enterprises more resilient and effective. Next slide, please. So this is more than just an Indonesian case study. So I'm trying to make this as a blueprint so that it can be applied in other contexts, not just Indonesia, but maybe in Palestine, Australia, in the UK, and the other parts of the world. In Malaysia, for example. So the principles of hybridity, synergy, and multiscalar networks can be adopted by similar academic institutions worldwide to play a more active role in building social cohesion. You can also use this model to build another study centers in your respective places, wherever you live in. So the conclusion is that CISRC effectively, not really effectively actually, we have been working with that, bridges the academic and activism divided as a religious entrepreneur. So while using our RMT framework, we see its success lies in the synergetic mobilization of cultural, human, and moral and social organizational resources. So this integrated model provides a viable blueprint for how academic institutions can be strategically designed to engineer interfaith cohesion and foster a peaceful life in plural society. So in CIS SRC case show that by acting as an entrepreneur and strategically mobilizing a diverse portfolio of resources, an academic institution can become a powerful engine for social cohesion, where we actively weaving the social fabric of a society or even of a nation. Thank you very much.
Okay, applause. Kita applause. Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, Pak Ferry Mamahit, and I think it's also insight for me. Okay, and I would like to join in your CICRC. Yeah. That is okay. Okay, and we come to the next speaker, and this is Georgina Jardim. Can you connect with Georgina Jardim, Pak Hasib? Hello, Ma'am Georgina Jardim.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hear you, but not very good.
Okay. Welcome to International Conference on Muslim and Christian Thoughts, okay, for these moments, and you are the last speaker for these sessions, and I hope, okay, you directly share your great idea. And time is yours, Bu Georgina Jardim.
Thank you very much. Can I share my video? Can I share a PowerPoint?
You can directly present from your over there, Madam Georgina Jardim. Yeah, you can share screen.
Okay. I'm sorry, I can't see anyone there. Can you hear me well, and can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. In the United, I'm going to talk about some of the interfaith activities we have in the United Kingdom, where we have a long established practice of making space and time for people of different beliefs to meet. Especially in November, we have an interfaith week every year. This is a time for local communities to restart regular meetings if perhaps they've stopped in the year, or they can start something new in the community. Some people host world cafes that include meals or shared iftar meals during Ramadan. Crafting and conversation is another way to share skills and to get to know each other. Cooking together or building something or cleaning up the local environment are all ways for people to connect. There are also times of crisis when the community comes together after a tragedy has taken place, like we saw at the vigil of the recent synagogue attack in Manchester. Each of these activities can include addressing local issues or communal concerns, sharing the broad aim of providing a local space for peaceful cooperation and discussion. Interestingly, interfaith dialogue does not necessarily mean that religion or religious topics are discussed at these events. Many people see them as cultural activities to describe worship practices for the public rather than religious events that explain beliefs, or to show how we have a shared humanity that cares about the same things. So how can we talk about religion across different religions and beliefs? That is, how can we talk about belief in God and ideas of justice or shared characters that have different stories in the scriptures, like which son did Abraham almost sacrifice on the altar? Or how did Mary give birth to Jesus? Or did Potiphar's wife confess her sins in causing innocent Joseph to go to prison? Our fear asks, won't these differences lead to confrontation or conflict if we talk about them to each other? Wouldn't it be better if we just focus on peaceful living side by side? So in this paper, I will describe a series of dialogues that occurred between different women in the county of Gloucestershire of the United Kingdom that are called Women at the Well. I will then explain the types of peaceful learning that took place in these meetings. And in conclusion, I will look at the practical guidelines of scriptural reasoning that makes this form of meeting into a deepening of faith. Women at the Well was a series of craft and conversation that took place over 2 years. The team consisted of 2 academics, 1 Muslim and 1 Christian, together with 2 community practitioners, 1 Muslim and 1 Christian. The academic part was led by Dr. Rana Abu Muhne's research into the water crisis in Jordan and its effects on Christians and Muslims in Jordan. This joined the network and skills of a local group that read the Bible and the Quran together, called Holy Book Club. The activity brought everyday believers and academics together, Muslims and Christians. The background to the Women of the Well activity was shaped in a large part by the lockdowns of the COVID pandemic. It was thought up as a test case for research in Jordan that resumed once the lockdowns had lifted. The 2 questions our activity wanted to address was the final 2 questions you see here on the board. Are there resources in the 2 traditions to address water scarcity? And if there are Christians and Muslims prepared to work together on such an acute problem? Our individual expertise in education, research, and community building joined up to decide how to break the isolation of COVID lockdowns and to make significant contributions to our communities through deep conversation. How do we go beyond the different interpretations of the political and the social issues we face every day? How do we think more broadly about illness, poverty, pollution that affect others as well as ourselves? We decided to look into the scriptures of the community to see how we relate to our own and other beliefs about God and creation. And so the reading of the Bible and the Quran became the engine that drove our conversation. But not all of us are good at speaking, especially when we don't share the same home language and we have different personality types, apart from our religious differences. So we brought the reading and discussion together with the craft of quilling to produce something tangible that reflected both the conversation and our individual creativity. The theme of water was the thing that determined the texts of participating Christians and Muslims, with scripture selection decided by the stories of water resources and the characters associated with these in the Bible and the Quran. Texts bringing women and wells together were chosen as the foundation of the aims of the group. Thus, the name of the project emerged as Women at the Well. This story type is well known to both Christian and Muslim traditions through the stories of Hagar or Hajar at the well that became known as, in the Hebrew, Be'er Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees, in Genesis 16, 1-15. Hagar is not named in the Quran, but her story is referenced in Surah Baqarah and Surah Ibrahim. We put her story together with the narrative of Mary giving birth in Surah Maryam because of the wilderness setting of both. The second set of texts contained the story of Moses meeting his wife at the well in Surah Qasas and Exodus, and Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman at the well in the Gospel of John. These texts formed the foundation of women and wells in Islamic and Christian scriptures and were selected so that we could scripturally reason through our understanding of God's care for humanity and the earth, and how God provides for our daily material needs as well as our deeper spiritual needs and in times of desperation. The craft of quilling is simply the making of paper curls that are shaped and then pasted onto paper to form images. Because we couldn't meet face-to-face during COVID lockdowns, packages of craft materials, including strips of colored paper, glue and cardboard, were put together and posted to each participant. Translations of the Quran and Bible texts were copied and distributed with the craft pack that was then used in a series of online meetings. The craft method of quilling was easy to teach and easy to learn through the online instruction, and it gave us a way to represent our responses to the conversations around life and scripture that happened in each meeting. At the end of the first series of online meetings, the individual pieces were combined into one exhibition piece. Participants wrote reflections on what they had learned and how much they valued the time shared. Each individual piece was put together in a banner that could be displayed, and the participants' thoughts were recorded alongside a photograph of their individual piece in a publication that was made available for sale. It raised funds for a charity linked to water resourcing and was displayed in a variety of ways. It was the banner that you see there on the picture hanging up on the wall was displayed in chapels, in art installations, a museum, and other locations as part of community projects. One was the COP26 meeting that was taking place in the UK at that time. A video was made explaining the significance of the project in the community that is still available to view online. There is a description on the website of the Centre for Muslim Christian Studies, Oxford, leading the research into water crisis. A local radio interviewed some of the participants, and a publication describing and illustrating the project is still available for sale. All these resources were made available not only to the participants of the Women at the Well activity, but to the community beyond. For instance, through the inclusion of faith leaders in launch events at a university chapel and a museum, it had open invitations to the public and the hosting of the project in a variety of spaces. These forums, events, and spaces included other members of the respective Muslim and Christian communities together with other faiths and those of no faith. Opportunities were thus created for learning across multiple differences in the wider local community, bridged by the Women at the Well group. and the engagement with the tangible artifacts that it produced. The project generated interest from other educational and interfaith groups, featuring as part of the Interfaith Network UK's multi-year report. The water theme was followed up later by 3 more series with topics such as gardens in God's creation and God's care about our consumption and waste. Now that we've heard about women at the well, let's ask those 2 questions that the research project asked at the beginning. Are there resources in the 2 traditions to address water scarcity? Yes, we saw believers from different religions coming together with their texts to explore their meaning for faith and for the communities and the environment we share. Are Christians and Muslims prepared to work together on such an acute problem? Yes, we saw academics and practitioners working together with everyday believers across their religious boundaries to produce learning for the whole community. So we can see that a peaceful space was created and that people of different religions could talk about their texts and their beliefs. And I'm just going to go back to this is the cover of the book that we produced. So can other people learn like us in the same way? What types of learning did this group produce that could be made available to everyone, not just to the women in the group? The group produced environmental literacy, specifically water resources in crisis, sharing information about acute shortages and cycles of flooding and drought in different parts of the world. It brought comparisons of consumption and structures of water provision from different parts of the world that people didn't know before. It brought scriptural literacy, discussing key passages in the Bible and the Quran that may inform thinking about water as a material and a spiritual resource in creation, and about human consumption as a faith practice that is addressed in both texts. And in this way, it made theological exchange possible between people. And thirdly, it created religio-cultural literacy, learning with people from different cultural and religious backgrounds, deepening understanding of religious practices and theological principles in relation to water and related regional issues. The results of increased literacies with regard to the environment, to scripture, and to cultural differences provide the foundation for relational and theological exchange. So how might this learning lead to deepening of faith? What we found in scriptural reasoning is a tool whereby people of different faiths join with each other to read and reflect on their scriptures. Unlike some forms of interfaith engagement, it does not seek to aim to find agreement at all costs, but it explores the texts and their possible interpretations across faith boundaries. And in this way, we learn to disagree better. The result is often a deeper understanding of others and one's own scriptures, as well as the development of bonds across faith communities. This does not imply that scriptural reasoning is generally or totally accepted by either the Muslim or Christian communities. However, it was considered that when faced with a common challenge, such as the COVID pandemic or the depleted environment, we can't just adapt our behaviors in a contingent way, that is, from one crisis to the next. It needs long-term and sustained effort, which the text strengthened by giving us the principled understanding and approach to the environment and our communities as shared gifts. In my experience of the practice of scriptural reasoning, or to make it easier, the reading of the Bible and the Quran alongside each other. I've actually found that it can start in the opposite way to a peaceful meeting as a tense atmosphere, where people enter the space nervous of each other and even a bit afraid. But I have invariably seen that by the end, friendship and understanding is to be seen after 2 or 3 hours together. And if not friendship, then at least knowing why other people believe what they believe. How did such a change happen? I want to give you the 8 guidelines of scriptural reasoning that provide the practical structure for every meeting. And it is with these 8 guidelines that I will conclude. So I should have moved the PowerPoint on. This is just an image of the text and some of the topics that we've discussed over many years in this activity. The 8 guidelines are the following. Stick to the text. Rather than having a general conversation about religion, try to stay focused on the text in front of you. You can talk about other sources, but always connect them to the text. Feel invited to explore others' texts and invite others to explore your text. Our scriptural reasoning is all about hospitality. We want to break down barriers and get to know you and your scriptures better. It is about open discussion rather than trying to reach an authoritative interpretation of the scripture. Number 3, listen carefully and charitably to others and give space to them. Allow for others' readings to be expressed and explored, even if you have very clear ideas about how a particular text should be understood. Number 4, be honest and curious. You are not expected to be an expert on everything in your own scriptures and faith tradition. So, be honest about the things you don't know or understand. You may not agree with other people's interpretations, and it is okay to say so, respectfully. But also, ask those questions of the others that you've always wanted to ask. Number 5, avoid generalization. Nobody represents their faith tradition in full. So avoid making statements such as Christians or Muslims believe. It would be better to say, for example, as a Christian or as a Muslim, I think this text means. Number 6, be present. Your full participation is very important. This means having a mindful presence, reading, reflecting, listening and discussing. Try not to do anything that may hinder this, such as using mobile phones, even to look something up which is related to the text, or don't leave the room in the middle of a discussion. Number 7, be respectful when handling the texts. Remember that the different traditions have different views on how the scriptures should be treated, and some faiths consider their scriptures to be sacred. This means that care should be taken when handling them. For example, don't place them on the floor or put drinks on them. If you're in doubt about how to treat the texts, speak to a fellow group member. And last one, number 8. Use the original languages to expand the conversation, not to close it down. No English translation of any of the text, the Bible or the Quran, is perfect, and most people in the group do not know all the original languages. The original language may provide added nuance, but keep the discussion based, in our case it was English, but of course in other countries it could be another home language. Don't quote large sections of untranslated text, and don't use the original languages to shut down the conversation. And I hope with these 8 guidelines I might inspire you to consider a scriptural a reasoning event yourself. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, give applause to Georgina Jardin. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ibu Georgina. And for the next time, okay, I would like to give the audience here or the participants of international conference here to have questions. And don't forget to mention, okay, your name and also what question going to Pak Richard, Pak Robert, Pak Mamet, and also Bu Georgina Jardins. Please, we have still 10 minutes until 15 minutes. Okay. The first is Christopher, Pak Christopher.
From Christian seminaries and Islamic universities. As you've talked about this initiative, could you relate to us the responses that you've had from Christian seminaries and Islamic universities? Are there things that you've noticed about the ways that these institutions have responded? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for questioning that. Based on my experience, that the response would be different from one institution from the other. I think what I observed that if you don't have really exposure with the Muslim-Christian relations or Muslim-Christian studies, you will not really be open and then respond positively. Yeah, it depends on their knowledge, their interaction, because in the academia or the academic world, you have Islamic studies. That's your room. And then you have the Christian studies, and that's your room. And you never meet in the same room with the studies. So what we try to bring with this center is to bring the two rooms together. So yeah, you can. Yeah, that's why it's really hard to communicate sometimes or to share the concerns of the center if they don't really have enough exposure or even knowledge about Muslim-Christians relations, actually. So that would be the main impression that I have so far. That's why I need to introduce, to make them understand about the nature of the relationship, yeah, or even the studies. Yeah.
So with that, do you have like an orientation, say to a seminary, you have an orientation, so, or else they might preach, or say for a Muslim university, you have orientation now. These are the guidelines, like the guidelines there, yeah? Do you do something similar with people who come along so they understand?
Yeah, we do that actually, so that educating people about the concept would be very important, I think. So whether to the Christian institutions or also to the Islamic uni institution, I think that would be the case. So how to you educate them. Okay.
Thank you so much for the time. My name is Abdi
from Universitas Darussalam Gontor. I would like to ask question to Mr. Richard Stafford about the nature. Keeping the nature is very important, as we know that, and you challenge us to be activists in nature. In your point of view, keeping nature will support beach building, or maybe there's any potential to destroy our efforts to build the beach, the peace. This is my question. Okay.
Langsung aja? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Does working or being activist, does it cause disharmony or can it build peace? I think that's the question, yeah. So in my experience in West Sumatra, the common problem that Ibu Georgina talked about, yeah, in her situation it was water scarcity. In our situation is trash and plastic pollution on the beach. Now we all enjoy going down to the Pantai Padang, Minum Kelapa, and enjoying the sunset, yeah? Whatever religion you're from, we all love that. But we look down and we see trash, because people throw their trash in the river. And so the disharmony, the conflict, is when people are like, this is wrong. We want the government to do something. We want things to change. So there has to be that conflict, that activism, yeah? But because it is people from different backgrounds, whether Christian or Muslim, they both want the beach to be clean. And so that brings people together, actually. And that's our experience. People are like, we want a better future together. This is something that will be a blessing for all of us. So it brings them together. Yeah. So some conflict, but more harmony and peace as we work together, I think.
Okay, Pak Cindy.
Yeah, my question is for Pak Ferry. I'm curious, what is or how is the evaluation process like for all the 4 stages of religious entrepreneurship in order to ensure that all goals actually achieved? Because you already stated all about the 4 stages, and I'm curious, how do you evaluate all of those? Thank you.
Yeah, of course we've been doing evaluation for all the process, and we have to admit that sometimes it's really hard actually to maintain the cycle. Sometimes you get stuck in one step, you cannot move forward. For example, the funding. If you have research, for example, and you have a proposal for research and you don't have money to do that, it won't work. That's why we really have to think about, it's not just about research, it's also about the organizing, financing, and also publishing the research. That's another thing. So we try to evaluate. It's been 2 years. It's not really become a model, a fixed model that can be applied to other organizations. But we are still developing, analyzing what's the cause of this problem. For example, financing all the programs and research. So I personally have not been made the assessment first, the assessment to evaluate all the process, but we'll be doing that because it's been 2 years, so it's not really long actually. So yeah, that's a good question. Then we have to think about that, how to evaluate so that we can improve for the years later. Yeah. So I don't have really the evaluating a kid, for example, assessment to assess all the process. We're just doing all this thing, and then when we find difficulties in moving from one step to another in the cycle, so we figure out by ourselves how to deal with that. So, for example, in funding, I try to work actually with Layman Institute and to try to propose a joint program so that our research could be financed by the resources that they have. So it should be working together to generate funds for all the operations of the center. So yeah, that's all that I can.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's we have still one question for the audience or participants. Yeah. Okay. But again, it's okay for participant of Lampung, Lamongan Kampung like me.
Okay, thank you very much. What Richard Stanford presented about the relationship between God and nature was very interesting. Borrowing the Minangkabau philosophy, alam tak kabang jadi guru. This is in line with sophistic thought, as conveyed by Ibn Arabi in Fususul Hikam, that this is your universe is manifestation atau tajalli of God. Thus, everything we see in nature, for example, fish, mosquitoes, plants, the sky, and all its contents, even human themselves, all lead back to God. To love God, one must love all of His creation. A person who damages nature does not love God. Creating conflict or hurting fellow humans also mean not loving God. Therefore, creating harmonization of life, both harmony with nature and with fellow humans, mean that one has been able to become a Khalifah on earth. The problem is, how do we socialize such a concept? Bagaimana mensosialisasikan konsep ini yang begitu bagus? Okay, thank you very much.
To Mr. Robert. Oh, sorry,
Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very difficult question, and so I cannot sit here and say there is an easy answer, yeah? But I think it starts by understanding that creation and people reflect God's image, yeah? Let's have an example. If I am annoyed with somebody, I just think, oh, they're so annoying. They're like this, and they never listen, and they do this. What happens is I forget for a moment that that person is created in God's image. There is something godlike about that person. They are valuable. Yeah, I've lost that. I'm only focusing on what is broken. And I think that's the first stage, is in brokenness with people, differences of opinion, we have to start by knowing we are all created by a creator, we are made in his image, and we need to honor and respect the person, even if we don't like them, but because mereka milik Tuhan, mereka mencerminkan Tuhan. Jadi kalau saya seperti merendahkan mereka, sebenarnya saya merendahkan Tuhan. I think it has to start there, but that is easier to say than to do. Yeah, I think that.
Okay. And Adekan, you would like to ask one? Special for you, because I afraid. Okay, if you
yeah, thank you very much for all the presenters, and it was very interesting. And let me start with Pak Ferry. I think that Pak Ferry, you have presented yourself as a religious person as well as a cultural person. And what I can understand from your presentation is that you are trying to use both religious approach and cultural approach in dealing with religious diversity. Now, you were talking about the religious entrepreneurship, and therefore you present yourself as a religious person. But when you come to the key resources in dealing with diversity, then you were talking about four resources, namely culture, human, moral, and then social organization. Religion has been missing here. There is no religion here. Is my understanding of you is correct? And if it is correct, and how would you locate, in what way will you combine religious approach and cultural approach, considering that in religious studies there has been so many streams and approaches in dealing with diversity, locating religious approach as in a very opposite direction with cultural approach. Those are different, two opposite direction. Cultural and religious approaches are two distinct approaches. But you present yourself as both, and that is very interesting, so we need to learn more about you. Now, to Stanford, if you are to name your approach in dealing with faith, using nature, you started with what is named fish to faith. And how do you name your fish approach to faith? Is it ecological approach or fishery approach or what? That is very interesting, so looking forward to hear from you. Yeah. And to Pak Pope, I have been struggling with the language problem when it comes to the Bible. Bahasa Indonesia and Bahasa Malaysia, for instance, there are so many differences. For instance, the word the Son of God, if you translate into Bahasa Indonesia, anak Tuhan. But when you come to Malaysia, budak Tuhan. Now, budak Tuhan, when you speak budak Tuhan to Indonesian, they will say, no, Jesus is not budak Tuhan. He is son of Tuhan, anak Tuhan. Budak means slave. So how do you deal with this difficulty in you call it the crisis of translation? Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you.
Monggo, Pak Ferry.
Yeah, thank you, Prof, for that valuable question. Yeah, I've not been thinking through about that, but the idea is that why this center was established is to meet these two worlds, cultural and religion. And I agree with you that sometimes they have a different approach with these two. But from the anthropological perspective, religion could be part of the culture. If you agree with that. Yeah, so one of the elements of the culture. So yeah, I'm not arguing about which one is more important about the two, but how these two actually, because in religion also there are cultural elements. In culture you have a religious element, so it can be what do you call it, intermingled between the two. Yeah, that's the idea about it. And answering about your question about how we locate religion in this area, yeah, actually, I have mentioned earlier that this is actually, the theory is from a socio-organizational development, the OD, the organization development, how to develop one organization, and this is very secular. There is no religious affiliation about that. But somehow I think we can integrate actually the social theory about the resource management model or theory into the religious aspects. That's what we have been doing in our center, to put all the theories and then to baptize them or to baptize them into the religious affairs. So yeah, it's honestly, this is a very secular approach. Yeah. But I think we can integrate religious studies into the resources that I have mentioned. Also, I mentioned about the knowledge. It should be a religious knowledge, actually. I mean, when I talk about the intellectual capital, it should be from the religious perspective, both Muslim and Christians. So when we talk about the moral, wow, it's more rich about that. We talk about the contribution of moral disciplines or moral principles into the capital, into the resources. So yeah, I think it's the theory is more on a neutral ground, but we have to put perspective on those theories so that it can serve as a tools actually to develop the center, the study center. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to the discussion. But I think we can move to mobilize all these resources with a religious perspective, not only a cultural or secular perspective. So that's all. So we can still locate effectively religious principles and so forth into the system. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. It has made me work hard, so I'm just like writing notes. So I think many people in the past have had a human-centered view of the world. Yeah. Jadi dunia itu boleh dimanfaatkan untuk kebutuhan saya. Yeah. I am the center of the world. I think more recently, people, especially in the West, have a nature-centered view, that we are part of nature, and that nature, with Gaia philosophy, is its own organism. Yeah? For me, both of those are inadequate. I think we need to have a God-centered view, and so maybe the word I would use would be steward. Yeah, again, Khalifa. Image, representative. If that's the view of how we view the world and relationships and other people, I think that is the right way. Yeah. But if you have better phrases, I would like to hear them in break. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, about translation. Yeah, the words, particularly sacred words. It's with translation, and this is a whole seminar in itself, but there's two approaches, text-based or meaning-based. And so if you're text-based, this Son of God, saya terjemahkan saja langsung to Melayu or whatever, yeah? That's text-based. And meaning-based, what is the meaning of this and how is it communicated in a different way, in a different style? So like for meaning-based, Ana Allah, Khalifa, meaning, getting the meaning. And so that's the challenge. Now the problem is that over time, particular words become sacred. We can't change that. Oh, like particular words over time, yeah, because of history and all of our history. And that's the challenge. When you have words that don't mean anything, tapi dianggap sakral, ini tidak bisa dirubah walaupun orang tidak mengerti. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, and this is one of just hearing from Daniel in the other room last night. It's putting aside the not being text-based is just totally meaning focused. It's a big slant towards meaning-based. Bagaimana ini bisa dipahami dengan benar? Jadi fokus di situ. Now, because of that, this is maybe not suitable for translation for Christian, maybe, because it's the sacred terminology that's focused on meaning. Yeah, this is the principle for everywhere, all translation.
Okay, I think this wonderful sessions, okay, for these moments, and I'm really would like to relay the time, but unfortunately, okay, because we really delay, okay, the time take more and more, so we don't aware that we now, okay, in 10, 20 search, okay. So, yeah, my stomach, okay, call me. It means that we need the rest, okay. For the end, okay, before we closing our session today, let's please applause together and also to the okay. I'm as moderator. If you find a mistake from me, please forgive me. And thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Information for all the audience, okay? The break time for us is 15 minutes, okay? Only 15 minutes. I'm really sorry for inconvenient information. Thank you.